Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelove, and this is Speedplay Touggourt number 25. We left off in the middle of a major war against Austria and Russia, and the main course of action right now is to just pull our forces a little bit back and into a good position. We also begin to subsidize Ming, as they're also fighting the Russians, and hopefully they'll be able to distract their force. Also, with our armies near Italy, we immediately begin a landing on Rome, the goal of which is to just kill all the Austrian armies nearby. And that looks as though it's going to go very well. We outnumber them significantly. We're also going to try to keep the Russians from actually attacking us, which would be a terrible disaster at this point. We do begin to attack the Austrian armies, and we just overwhelm them horrendously, so that's going to work very well. There's also a bit going on in Kamchatka where I'm just trying to get an army to defeat a few enemies and then get back to the coast to evacuate. We're really going to focus most of our forces on just making a line in the Caucasus Mountains and the Middle East, around Iran actually. Furthermore, we're going to build a large number of heavy ships, because eventually, if we are going to unify Islam, the very next thing we need to do is declare war on Spain. Our troops begin to show up from our far eastern areas. We are doing fairly well in Italy, and the Austrians don't seem to want to force the mountain passes to get into Iran. So hopefully they won't be able to connect with the Russians and will be in a fairly decent spot. Now, we don't have enough time to unify Islam. By the way, already paying dividends, the Russian armies appear to be moving over to fight Ming, so we're able to start destroying a few small forces. I'm not sure if that's directly because we're subsidizing Ming now, but I'd like to think it has an effect. Anyway, as I was saying, if we are going to unify Islam, we really can't fight a war to the absolute bitter end with Austria and Russia. For one, the Russian forces just a moment ago were incredibly powerful and in tremendous numbers. They went to go fight Ming, but if they come back, we will have a terrible problem on our hands. We're also beginning to slightly evacuate Italy in the face of more Austrian opposition. Now, the idea is in part that we may be able to just bring forces in from the sea to reinforce if they do attack. However, I'm at this point considering just pulling back more or less. The Russians are making it just too tempting, so we're going to keep stack wiping a few small forces, or at least pushing them back and disorganizing them. As, quite frankly, if you see an opportunity that good, you may as well take it. The Austrians seem to be pulling more forces over to Italy, so we may just evacuate entirely. Now, if we do want to unify Islam, and that is essentially the goal at this point, I'm going to have to declare war on Spain. Now, the war against Austria and Russia isn't going particularly well in the sense of most of the battles are occurring on our territory, except, interestingly enough, against the Russians, but they're distracted. However, since the war goal is to take our capital, we're actually doing fairly well. There's no way they're going to breach that far that they'll take our capital, if for the very least, because we can always just drop our armies against Austria itself. We do get attacked by the Spanish, and it looks as though we're going to win this out loud. Anyway, though, at the end we could just take their capital if they are making their way all the way to ours, and they would either have to just accept that or turn back. Either thing would save our capital, either by ending the war. So, with that in mind, I feel like it's safe that we can pull our forces away to deal with the Spanish, which we have already declared war on. Now, I also set up the message settings so that we're going to get warnings every time our armies are attacked. This is essentially vital just because of the number of fronts we're fighting on. Simply, I'm not going to notice if the enemies are marching towards us everywhere, and I'd rather get the notification the day the battle starts than when our army is stack wiped. Hopefully that and pretty defensive posturing against the Russians will make it so that we can win the war against Spain, and hopefully just lower Austria's willingness to fight this war. We're probably just going to take a few lands in Central Asia from Russia, just a bit that will give us a nice border up to Samarkand, which we need to take to unify Islam. Now, unfortunately, I don't believe we'll be able to complete most of our objectives. Definitely the Ottomans are going to survive, and we may not even be able to fight them again before the end, which is a bit of a bummer, but at this point I want to at least solidly achieve one major goal before the end, and it looks as though we will be able to quickly make peace with the Russians and the Austrians. Russia won't make peace on their own, but Austria is more than willing to sell them out. So it ends up working out for us in the end anyway. Now, with that achieved, we can focus most of our forces against Spain. We also need to bring a few against Milan, which is a Spanish ally. Now, we may also bring a few forces over towards Samarkand. Depending on if we need the forces in the west or not, we may be able to declare that war relatively quickly. Now, one major concern is we do need to get a brief respite just to declare a quick peace on everyone that we have war against and make a client state. We're really overextended, and that's going to be a problem. However, at this point, we just have to win the war against Spain and Milan. And we do get rebellions. Hopefully we'll be able to deal with our rebellions. We start getting 3 armies so that we can start shipping troops back to the west. Unfortunately, a Milanese navy sank a small bit of our fleet, so we're going to have to actually deal with that before we can get our troops over. It's a bit of a problem, and I'm very upset that they're just using our Suez Canal. Luckily, they're going to fix that in a future patch. Although by that point, although we are already in an outdated version, this will almost certainly be over by then, as quite frankly, I can't imagine we have more than a single episode left at this point, as we are getting very, very worryingly near the end, especially when we have not completed a couple of our objectives for unifying Islam. At any rate, I don't see the Milanese navy. It looks as though most of it's either destroyed or just out of the way at this point. Hopefully it's safe to send our transports over, which we're doing anyway. Kiev has revolutionaries. That may come up later. I'm not entirely sure if you can get a revolutionary vassal. It may just change their government. Now, at any rate, we're in a fairly good spot. Ming has a revolution, which reminds me to cancel subsidies. And our armies are doing decently well in Spain. We aren't really moving forward. However, we're doing very well in Milan, where we're sieging out most of the country. The Ottomans declare war on Armenia, so we declare war as well, basically just to steal that from them before they're able to take it. Now, one possibility is we could vassalize Armenia. Unfortunately, we are starting to do fairly poorly in the north of Italy. At any rate, what we could do is vassalize Armenia, which would force us to inherit their war against the Ottomans, which could let us begin to fight the Ottomans and maybe get a few concessions from them. Ultimately, though, that really depends on how well our wars are going in the West. If we're able to just dominate the Spanish and get out quickly with Cordoba, then we may do that. Otherwise, we'll probably just annex Armenia, which is Coptic, by the way, and would be a bit of a weird vassal to have. Although that would prevent us from fighting the Ottomans for at least a couple years. Then again, at this point, it's basically a choice of either unify Islam or defeat the Ottomans. And we get an event that gives us several thousand gold, lowers our Republican tradition, which I'd been trying to raise, but the alternative was to lose stability. And the only reason I want to raise Republican tradition is so we don't have to lower our stability, and so that it isn't incredibly expensive to raise it. So, Republican tradition at the cost of stability is worth it. We will take the stability. I may have said that backwards. At any rate, with the defeat of the Spanish army, we're able to begin carpet sieging them. There are still Spanish forces that are going to be probably a significant problem. However, a decent portion of their force is dead. The Milanese are making a comeback, which is a problem. Ultimately, we need more forces here, and we don't really have that. We did win against the Milanese, and it looks as though we may win just through sheer numbers and determination against the Spanish, so it may not actually be that much of a disaster. Now with that done, we can hopefully begin spreading out against the Spanish, just carpet sieging once more. In the ideal world, we'll be able to make peace relatively quickly. We are starting to get rebellions. Hopefully that's not something that's going to be a problem. We do lose another battle against the Milanese. Their army is just strong enough and the mountains are just annoying enough that we can't really defeat their army. We have to let it attack us. Luckily, it looks as though we may win this battle. And there we go. We've won the battle. We have forces up in the north, hopefully taking out their mountain area. It doesn't look like that worked. And we can hopefully smash the remaining Spanish army in Spain proper. Now, hopefully, this is going to be the beginning of a more calm era on the Spanish front. The Milanese, we're being a little more respectful towards keeping our armies while very forward in large groups. The sieging forces are hopefully not too beleaguered. There is a bit of a rebellion going on in Greece. Hopefully we'll be able to quickly bring our forces over to deal with that. And in the Far East, hopefully our army is going to take care of those rebellions. We just sort of sent them on a shift order mission. Hopefully they don't lose any of them. At this point, we are able to make peace with Milan. And I'm probably just going to annex Armenia, as we are not really in that good of a spot. The Spanish will not make peace, which is a bit unfortunate, and we are overextension, which is even less fortunate. So we're just going to not click that Patriot Sentiment event. Hopefully it'll prevent another one from popping up. That may just be Europa playing Myth. I'm not entirely certain. We are getting a vast amount of rebellions. All we need to do is win this war against Spain so we can release our client state out of the Indian territory we haven't cored, and we will be under overextension. And once that's done, we'll be able to bring our forces over to deal with our rebellions. We do make peace, we do have Cordoba, we can start releasing this new client state, which, like any good client state, has a name that is at least somewhat, or in this case, pretty obviously a lie, but the Free Indian Republic will be a great use to us, if for nothing else, to just get us back under overextension. We give them a flag somewhat similar to ours, only with something kind of vaguely Indian. And at this point, hopefully we're in a good spot. We just need to make Cordoba Islamic and double check that all the other provinces that we need to unify Islam are going to be Islamic by the end of the game. We'll core a few places, and hopefully all we have to do now is declare war on the Oirate Horde and take some markland from their vassals, the Timurids. If we can get that done, by 1821 we can unify Islam. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We are so close to the end. It is just down to this war with Samarkand, and if we can keep our eastern holdings from breaking apart.